All right, so get this, we're going deep today, okay? Like, straight into this Reddit relationship trauma, and I think you're going to like this one.
Oh, yeah, I saw this one.
Yeah, this husband is, like, asking for advice because his wife wants to hang out with his friends all the time, and it's, like, causing some problems.
It's always interesting, right? Like, where's the line between being together and having your own space?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how do you balance that, right? Like, you want to be with your partner, but, like, you also need time with your own friends.
I think a lot of people struggle with that, like figuring out those boundaries, what works for each person, what works for the couple.
Totally. And this guy, he's saying he loves his wife, but when she's always there with his buddies, it makes things weird.
And he's tried talking to her about it too, right? He wants some guy time, but she just says, as long as you're not doing anything wrong, it's fine.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's kind of rough.
Like she doesn't trust him or something.
Yeah, it totally implies a lack of trust there.
And the Reddit comments are wild on this one.
Oh, I bet.
People are saying all sorts of things like lay down the law or like start showing up at her girls' nights.
That's Reddit for you, right? Everyone's got an opinion.
It's true. But it's interesting to see like how differently people view this kind of situation.
Yeah, it really shows you how subjective these things are.
Absolutely. Like what one person thinks is totally normal, another person's like, whoa, red flag.
Exactly. And it all boils down to those individual comfort levels and what you consider acceptable in a relationship.
So true. And it's tough because, like, you want to be close to your partner, but you also need your own space, those friendships that, let you be you.
For sure. And actually, there's a relationship expert, John Botma. I think you've heard of him.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He talks about this a lot in his research. He says it's so important to maintain those separate identities, even in a committed relationship.
Right, because it's not about keeping secrets. It's about, like, having those different parts of your life that, make you a whole person.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's a really interesting point and something I think we should dig into a little more. But first, I want to get into some of those juicy Reddit comments.
All right, let's hear him.
Let's see what the internet has to say about this guy's dilemma.
The wisdom of the crowd.
So this guy is like stuck between a rock and a hard place, right?
Yeah.
His wife maybe needs some reassurance, and then all these Redditors are like giving him advice.
Yeah, you always get that on Reddit.
Let's see if there's any actual wisdom in these comments.
Okay, let's dive in.
What jumps out at me is like a lot of people are saying this guy needs to be more direct.
Yeah, I see that too.
Like he's got to tell his wife straight up that he needs some space.
It seems like he's been kind of avoiding the issue. Maybe he's scared of hurting her feelings or starting a fight.
Yeah, but that's not good, like trying to keep everyone happy but ending up feeling resentful.
Right. It's like he's stuck in this people-pleasing mode and it's not working for him.
Exactly. And that's a recipe for disaster in any relationship, really.
Totally. And that's where those communication skills we were talking about come in.
So it's not about like blaming her or anything, right? It's about like explaining his needs in a calm way.
Exactly. It's about being assertive but also respectful.
So like what would that even sound like? Like how do you tell your wife you need guy time without making her feel bad?
Well, imagine he says something like, hey, honey, I love being with you, but I also really value these hangouts with my friends.
Okay.
It's a chance for me to unwind, connect with them in a different way, maybe even tap into a side of myself I don't always get to express when we're together.
I like that.
It's honest, right? It acknowledges her importance, but also sets that boundary.
Like, hey, this is important to me and I need you to respect that.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's also important to like hear her side of things too, right?
Absolutely. Active listening is key here. What are her concerns? Is it insecurity? Fear of missing out, maybe even boredom with her own social life?
You got to understand where she's coming from, right?
Totally. It's about finding a compromise that works for both of them.
And let's be real. Sometimes it's not just about needing space from your partner, right?
I know.
It's about those dynamics in different friend groups.
Like there's a reason why we have guys' nights and girls' nights.
Exactly. Men and women just connect differently
Oh,
sometimes.
right. Research actually shows that men tend to bond over activities and humor, while women often prioritize emotional sharing and support.
Makes sense.
Obviously, there are exceptions, but those general tendencies can create a different energy in those same gender groups.
And that's okay.
Oh, absolutely. It's just about recognizing those differences and respecting them.
Like you wouldn't expect a fish to climb a tree,
I love that.
Different creatures, different habitats.
Perfect analogy, It's like trying to force everyone into the same social environment can just make things awkward.
Yeah.
The husband's friends might feel like they have to censor themselves around his wife, and that's not fun for anyone.
And ultimately, it just diminishes the whole experience for everyone involved.
Exactly.
So how do you find that balance then? Like between those individual needs for space and the desire for togetherness in a relationship?
It is tricky.
It's like this delicate dance. Yeah.
It is a delicate dance, but it can be done, it just takes practice and communication.
So what does that look like practically?
Well, maybe it's having designated guys' nights and girls' nights, but also scheduling regular couple outings with friends.
Okay.
Or maybe it's finding shared hobbies or activities that they can both enjoy with different groups of people.
So it's about finding that sweet spot, right? That
Yeah,
balance between me time, we time, and everyone time.
exactly. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
What works for one couple might not work for another.
And what works for you today might need to be adjusted later.
Hmm.
Life changes, relationships evolve.
It's all about staying flexible, communicating, and listening to each other.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Speaking of listening, I want to go back to that comment about the wife maybe projecting her own behavior onto her husband.
Oh, yeah, that was an interesting one.
Like maybe she's assuming he's doing the same thing she might do with her friends.
It's definitely possible.
What do you think is going on there?
Well, it brings us to this concept of projection. It's a psychological defense mechanism where we unconsciously put our own thoughts, feelings, or behaviors onto other people.
So it's like she's seeing the world through her own lens,
Exactly.
assuming everyone operates the same way she does.
And projection isn't always a bad thing, but it can cause problems if it leads to misunderstandings or mistrust.
Right.
In this case, it's possible that her assumptions about her husband's behavior are coming from her own insecurities or past experiences.
So it's not necessarily that she doesn't trust him. It's more like she's projecting her own anxieties onto the situation.
Right.
That's a really important distinction, and it shows how important it is to talk about those deeper fears and insecurities that might be driving the behavior.
Absolutely. It's about creating a safe space where they can both be vulnerable with each other and work together to address those underlying issues.
Sometimes just acknowledging those fears can make a huge difference.
For sure, it can be a big step towards building trust and understanding.
And sometimes it might even require going to couples counseling, right?
Yes, sometimes you need a little extra help to unpack those deeper issues and develop healthier communication pattern.
There's no shame in that.
None at all. It can actually be a sign of strength and commitment to the relationship.
Like going to the doctor for a checkup.
Exactly. You might feel fine on the surface, but it's always good to get a professional opinion and catch any potential problems early.
So we've talked about communication boundaries, projection, even the possibility of therapy.
It's a lot to unpack.
This whole Reddit post about guys' nights has turned into this deep dive into all these relationship complexities.
It has, but that's what I love about these conversations.
We start with a simple question and end up exploring all these fascinating layers of human behavior.
It's like peeling an onion, right?
Each layer reveals something new and intriguing, and sometimes makes you cry a little.
Aha, that's a good one.
Speaking of revealing layers, there's one more thing we need to talk about from this Reddit thread.
Okay, what's up?
The role of trust in a healthy relationship.
Yeah, that's huge,
That seems to be the big thing here.
right? It is.
That underlying tension that's causing all the conflict.
We touched on it earlier, but it's worth diving into a bit deeper.
All right, let's do it. So trust, right? Like without trust, you're building a house on sand.
Yeah, it's the foundation of everything. Vulnerability, intimacy, freedom to be yourself without constantly worrying.
And in this situation with this Reddit couple, it seems like that trust is a little shaky.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that whole it's fine as long as you're not doing anything wrong, that's a big red flag.
It is. It suggests she doesn't fully trust him to be out with his friends without her there, and that can really damage a relationship.
So, like, how do you even fix that? Can you rebuild trust once it's broken?
It's definitely possible, but it takes work, commitment and willingness to be vulnerable on both sides.
Like, what kind of work?
Well, the first step is acknowledging the problem, right? Having those honest conversations about why the mistrust exists in the first place.
Like, what's at the root of it?
Exactly. Is it past experiences, insecurities? Did he do something to break her trust before? You got to figure out where it's coming from.
Like untangling a knot, right?
Yeah, you got to trace those threads back to the source before you can start loosening them.
And sometimes you need a little help with that, right?
Absolutely. Couple therapy can be so helpful in these situations.
Yeah, it gives them a safe space to talk things out.
Right. And a therapist can help them communicate and better identify those unhealthy patterns and find ways to rebuild trust and set healthier boundaries.
Okay, so we've talked about the problem, the solutions, but what about our listeners out there?
Yeah.
Like, what can they take away from this? What advice would you give them if they're dealing with similar issues in their own relationships?
I think the most important thing is communication. Don't let those little resentments build up.
So if you're feeling suffocated or like your need for space isn't being respected, speak up.
Yes, but do it in a way that's assertive, but also kind and respectful.
It's not about blaming anyone. It's about explaining your needs and feelings in a way that helps your partners understand.
Exactly. And remember, it's a two-way street.
You got to be willing to listen to your partner's perspective, too.
Right. Maybe they don't even realize how their behavior is affecting you.
Or maybe they have their own insecurities that are causing them to be needy.
It's all about finding that middle ground, that balance between your individual needs and the connection you share.
And that balance is going to look different for every couple, right?
Absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
The important thing is to keep talking, be willing to compromise, and keep working on that foundation of trust and respect.
It's like tending a garden, you know?
You got to water it, weed it, give it the right amount of sunlight.
Relationships need that constant care and attention to thrive.
So true. Well, I think we've covered a lot today.
We have.
From people-pleasing to projection, communication breakdowns, trust boundaries. It's been quite a deep dive.
It really has, and it all started with a simple Reddit post.
It's amazing how much we can learn from these everyday relationship dramas.
It shows that we're all struggling with these same issues, you know?
And there's always more to learn about ourselves and our relationships.
Absolutely.
And on that note, I want to thank everyone for joining us today on Voices of the Soul.
It's been a pleasure.
Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and check out the Shauna Polage YouTube channel for more great content.
See you next time.
Until then, keep those conversations flowing, and remember, healthy relationships are a journey, not a destination.